The Affair of the Vermilion Cipher, Chapter 5, The Bath Connection. A brief word to our listeners, my dear friends, as we embark upon Chapter 5 of this lengthy chronicle, for this investigation proves to be one of extraordinary scope, spanning 14 chapters in total. Permit me to briefly recount where last we left our narrative. In Chapter 4, Holmes and I visited both Cartwright's bank and Sir Henry Ashworth's residence in Belgrave Square, where my observations confirmed Holmes's darkest suspicions regarding the Member of Parliament's involvement in this conspiracy. The discovery of the Vermilion Society's account at Cartwright's, combined with Sir Henry's suspicious reactions and the jade dragon upon his desk, painted a portrait of deception most troubling. A photograph from Holmes's files revealed an even more damning connection. Sir Henry had known the mysterious silk merchant Lei Chen years before the theft occurred, suggesting a conspiracy of long standing. I do encourage you, dear listeners, to ensure you have pressed the like button, subscribed to this channel, and rung the notification bell, that you might not miss a single chapter of this most intricate affair as it unfolds toward its dramatic conclusion. And now we continue with Chapter 5, wherein Holmes and I journey to Bath to interview Lieutenant Colonel Forsyth, keeper of secrets most vital to our investigation. Chapter 5 begins. The morning train to Bath departed Paddington Station at 8 o'clock sharp. The morning train to Bath departed Paddington Station at 8 o'clock sharp. Holmes and I secured a first-class compartment to ourselves, which allowed us to speak freely about the case during the journey. The countryside rolled past the windows, green and pleasant in the early spring sunshine, but neither of us paid it much attention. Our minds were fixed on what we might learn from Lieutenant Colonel Forsyth. "I have made some inquiries about Forsyth," Holmes said, consulting his notebook. "He retired from active service in 1890, shortly after Pemberton left India. He settled in Bath, where he lives on his military pension and a modest inheritance from an aunt. He is said to be a scholar of sorts, a student of Oriental languages and cultures. He lives quietly, avoids society, and spends most of his time in study. In short, Watson, he sounds like exactly the sort of man to whom Pemberton might have entrusted sensitive information." "Do you think he has the cipher?" I asked. "I think he may know where it is, or at least where one half of it is hidden. Remember, Watson, the cipher was split into two parts, the coded text itself and the key to decoding it. Pemberton would have placed them in different hands, ensuring that neither could be used without the other. If Sir Henry has been searching for the cipher, it stands to reason that he already possesses one half and is desperately seeking the other. But if the document stolen from Major Ashworth contained the location of one half, why has Sir Henry not yet found it? An excellent question. Perhaps the information in the documents was less specific than he had hoped. Perhaps it was itself encoded in some way that he has not yet been able to decipher. Or perhaps, and this is what I am beginning to suspect, Major Ashworth himself possesses some piece of information that is necessary to locate the cipher, information he does not even realize he has. What sort of information? That, Watson, is what we must determine. But consider, Major Ashworth was in charge of highly sensitive documents. He was trusted with materials that would have been seen by very few people. It is possible that among those documents was something relating to the cipher, something so obscure that even Ashworth did not recognize its significance. And perhaps Sir Henry knows this, which is why he has now decided his brother must die. Perhaps he fears that we will discover this information and use it to find the cipher before he can. The train arrived in Bath shortly before noon, and we took a cab to the address Holmes had obtained for Lieutenant Colonel Forsyth. It proved to be a small but respectable house in a quiet residential street, surrounded by a well-tended garden. The neighborhood was genteel and peaceful, far removed from the dangers and intrigues of London. Our knock was answered by an elderly woman who identified herself as Mrs. Hobbs, the housekeeper. When Holmes presented his card and explained that we wished to speak with Colonel Forsyth on a matter of some importance, she showed us into a comfortable sitting room and went to fetch her employer. The room was lined with bookshelves, and the books themselves were a fascinating collection: military histories, works on Oriental languages, ancient Chinese poetry in both the original and in translation, and treatises on cryptography and code breaking. There were also several curious objects displayed on shelves and tables: jade figurines, bronze vessels, silk scrolls covered with elegant calligraphy. "Gentlemen," a voice said from the doorway, "I am Peter Forsyth. Mrs. Hobbs tells me you wish to speak with me on an urgent matter." The man who entered was perhaps 60 years old, spare and erect, with iron-grey hair and keen blue eyes that missed nothing. His face was deeply lined, speaking of years spent in harsh climates and difficult circumstances, but his manner was alert and vigorous despite his age. He was dressed simply but well, and he moved with the quiet confidence of a man who had faced danger and survived. Holmes introduced us both and briefly explained the purpose of our visit, though he was careful to reveal only so much as was necessary. He mentioned the theft from Major Ashworth, the attempts on the Major's life, and our investigation into the affair. He did not immediately mention Pemberton or the Vermilion Cipher, choosing instead to observe Forsyth's reactions as the conversation progressed. Forsyth listened intently, his expression grave. "I remember Geoffrey Ashworth," he said when Holmes had finished. "A fine officer, thoroughly dedicated to his duty. I was shocked when I heard of the theft and his subsequent disgrace. I found it difficult to believe that he could have been negligent, much less treasonous. Your investigation suggests that my instincts were correct. You served under Sir Charles Pemberton, did you not?" Holmes asked, changing the subject abruptly. Forsyth's expression became instantly guarded. "I did. Why do you ask?" "Because we believe that the documents stolen from Major Ashworth related to intelligence matters, possibly to operations that were under Pemberton's command. We are attempting to understand what information those documents might have contained and why someone would go to such lengths to obtain them." "Mr. Holmes," Forsyth said carefully, "you are asking me about matters that are still classified even after all these years. I took an oath of secrecy regarding my work under Pemberton. I cannot violate that oath even for you." "I respect your integrity, Colonel," Holmes replied, "but I must ask you to consider the gravity of the situation. An innocent man has been disgraced and is now targeted for murder. British intelligence assets may be at risk, and there is reason to believe that someone with resources and connections, is seeking to obtain something of immense strategic value. I am referring, Colonel, to the Vermilion Cipher." The effect of Holmes's words was dramatic. Forsyth went pale, and his hand gripped the arm of his chair so tightly that his knuckles showed white. "How do you know that name?" he demanded, his voice barely above a whisper. "I have my sources," Holmes said calmly, "and I have reason to believe that you, Colonel Forsyth, may be one of the last men alive who knows the truth about the cipher. Sir Charles Pemberton created it, did he not? And when he left India he placed it, or part of it, in the care of someone he trusted absolutely. Was that someone you, Colonel?" Forsyth rose from his chair and walked to the window, staring out at his peaceful garden. For a long moment he said nothing, clearly wrestling with some internal conflict. Finally he spoke, his voice heavy with emotion. "Sir Charles Pemberton was the finest man I ever knew. He was brilliant, dedicated, and utterly committed to the defense of British interests in India. He was also profoundly suspicious of the bureaucracy that governed our intelligence operations. He feared that the networks he had built up over decades could be compromised by incompetence, corruption, or treachery within the official channels. So he created the Vermilion Cipher, a complete record of our intelligence assets throughout Asia, encoded using the most sophisticated methods available." He turned to face us, his expression troubled. "The cipher was his masterwork, Mr. Holmes, but it was also his greatest fear. He knew that if it fell into the wrong hands, the consequences would be catastrophic, so he divided it. The cipher itself, the encoded list of names, locations, and protocols, he entrusted to one person. The key to decoding it he gave to another, and he told no one, not even those two individuals, the identity of the other person who held the corresponding part. "And you, Colonel?" Holmes prompted gently. "Which part did you receive?" Forsyth was silent for a moment, then sighed deeply. "I have the key, Mr. Holmes. Pemberton gave it to me shortly before he left India, with strict instructions that it was never to be used unless the most extreme circumstances required it, and never without the authorization of the highest levels of government. I have kept it safe all these years, hidden where no one would think to look for it." "Do you still have it?" Holmes asked urgently. "I do. Would you like to see it?" Without waiting for a response, Forsyth went to one of the bookshelves and removed a volume, a copy of Herodotus's Histories in Greek. He opened it to a specific page and carefully removed from a hollowed-out cavity within the book a small object wrapped in oiled silk. He unwrapped it to reveal a disc of bronze, perhaps 3 inches in diameter, and engraved with intricate symbols and characters. It looked ancient, almost like an archaeological artifact, but I could see that the engravings were crisp and clear, the work of a skilled craftsman. "This is the key," Forsyth said, holding it up to the light. "These symbols represent a complex substitution cipher, one that Pemberton himself devised based on ancient Chinese and Sanskrit texts. Without this key, the Vermilion Cipher is meaningless. With it, the entire intelligence network becomes visible." "Colonel," Holmes said with great seriousness, "I believe that someone is actively searching for this key. The theft from Major Ashworth was the first step in that search. The attempts on his life suggest that the search has become desperate. I must ask you, has anyone approached you recently, asking questions about Pemberton or about intelligence matters from that period?" Forsyth frowned. "Not recently, no, but some years ago, it must have been 1893 or thereabouts, I received a visitor here in Bath. He claimed to be a researcher writing a history of British intelligence operations in India. He asked me many questions about Pemberton and about my own service. I was careful to reveal nothing of significance, but I confess that his interest seemed somewhat excessive. At the time, I attributed it to scholarly enthusiasm. Now I wonder, can you describe this visitor? He was a gentleman in his late 30s or early 40s, well-spoken, clearly educated. He said his name was Richards, Dr. Martin Richards, and he claimed to be affiliated with Cambridge University. He was particularly interested in Pemberton's methods of securing sensitive information. His physical appearance," Holmes pressed, "tall, perhaps 6 feet or slightly more, with grey hair beginning to show at the temples. His features were regular, rather distinguished. He had the bearing of a military man despite his civilian dress. There was a scar, I recall, on his left hand, a thin white line across the back of it." Holmes and I exchanged glances. The description could fit Sir Henry Ashworth, though it could also fit many other men of similar age and background. "Did you tell him anything of substance?" Holmes asked. "Nothing. I informed him that I was bound by oath not to discuss intelligence matters and suggested he contact the War Office through official channels. He seemed disappointed, but accepted my refusal gracefully. He left shortly afterward, and I never heard from him again." "Colonel Forsyth," Holmes said, his voice taking on an urgent tone, "I believe that your life may be in danger. If the person seeking the Vermilion Cipher discovers that you possess the key, he will not hesitate to take it by force. The same organization that attacked Major Ashworth, the Black Lotus, may well be sent to acquire the key from you." Forsyth smiled grimly. "Mr. Holmes, I am not unaware of the dangers. I have lived with this responsibility for over 5 years. I have taken precautions. This house is more secure than it appears, and I am not without means to defend myself." He gestured to a drawer in his desk. "I keep a loaded revolver within reach at all times. and I am still, despite my age, a capable shot. Nevertheless, Holmes insisted, I would urge you to take additional precautions. Perhaps you might consider removing yourself to London, where Watson and I could provide more direct protection, and bring the danger to your doorstep. I think not, Mr. Holmes. Besides, if whoever is searching for the key has not found me in 5 years, I doubt they will do so now. No, I shall remain here, where I have the advantage of familiar ground. Holmes was clearly not satisfied with this response, but he recognized the stubborn determination in Forsyth's manner. Very well, Colonel, but I must ask one more thing of you. The cipher itself, do you know where it is? Did Pemberton tell you who held the other half? He did not, and I never asked. That was the point, you see, complete separation, so that even under torture neither of us could betray the other. But I have my suspicions, Mr. Holmes. There were only a handful of men whom Pemberton trusted absolutely, and most of them are now dead. If I had to guess, I would say that the cipher itself was given to Colonel James Hartley, who died in 1893, or possibly to Captain Thomas Waverley, who died in 1891. Both dead, Holmes mused. Which means the cipher would have passed to their heirs or executors. Watson, we must make inquiries into the estates of both these men. The cipher must be found before it falls into the wrong hands. We spoke with Forsyth for another hour, extracting what additional details we could about Pemberton's intelligence operations and the circumstances surrounding the creation of the Vermilion Cipher. Throughout, Forsyth remained cooperative but careful, revealing only what he deemed necessary and nothing more. He was a man who had kept secrets for a very long time and who would not easily abandon his discretion, even for Sherlock Holmes. As we prepared to take our leave, Forsyth gripped Holmes's hand firmly. Mr. Holmes, find the cipher before it falls into treasonous hands. Pemberton entrusted me with the key because he believed I would guard it with my life. I have done so for 5 years, and I shall continue to do so for as long as necessary. But the cipher itself, if it still exists, must be secured. The lives of hundreds of brave men and women depend upon it. You have my word, Colonel, Holmes replied solemnly. I shall not rest until this matter is resolved. The return journey to London was spent in intense discussion. Holmes was convinced that we were close to a breakthrough, that the pieces of the puzzle were finally beginning to fit together. Consider what we know, Watson, he said, his eyes bright with intellectual excitement. Sir Henry Ashworth, motivated by financial need and political ambition, learned of the Vermilion Cipher through his service under Pemberton. He hired the Black Lotus to steal documents from his brother that contained information about the cipher's location. Those documents pointed him toward either Hartley or Waverley, both now deceased. He has spent 2 years searching for the cipher among their effects, but has been unsuccessful. Meanwhile, he knows that Forsyth possesses the key, but he cannot simply steal it without first securing the cipher, as one is useless without the other. But why has he only now decided to murder his brother? I asked. Because something has changed, Watson. Either Sir Henry has finally located the cipher and now needs only the key to complete his prize, or he fears that our investigation will lead us to the cipher before he can secure it. In either case, he has decided that his brother must die, both to eliminate a potential source of information and to tie up loose ends. A man of Sir Henry's position cannot afford to leave witnesses. What is our next move? We must investigate the estates of Hartley and Waverley. One of them received the cipher from Pemberton, and it must still exist somewhere among their effects. I shall send telegrams this evening to various contacts, seeking information about what became of their personal belongings after their deaths. Meanwhile, we must set our trap for the Black Lotus. Tomorrow evening, we shall spread the word that Major Ashworth is being transferred, and we shall see who takes the bait. We arrived back in London as darkness was falling. Holmes immediately dispatched several telegrams from the station, then we took a cab to Baker Street. As we climbed the familiar stairs to our lodgings, I felt a growing sense of anticipation. The case was reaching its climax, and I sensed that events would soon move with dramatic swiftness. Mrs. Hudson greeted us with the news that a message had arrived for Holmes in our absence. It was from Inspector Lestrade of Scotland Yard, written in his characteristically blunt style. "Mr. Holmes, have posted 2 constables at St. Bartholomew's as you requested. Also have news regarding your inquiries about Chinese criminal societies. Can you call at the yard tomorrow morning?" Lestrade, excellent, Holmes said, reading the note. Lestrade may have uncovered information about the Black Lotus that will prove useful. Watson, I suggest we dine early and retire. Tomorrow promises to be a most eventful day. And thus, dear listeners, we conclude this chapter with Lieutenant Colonel Forsyth's solemn revelations still echoing in our minds. The bronze key, that ancient disc engraved with symbols of terrible significance, rests safely in the Colonel's keeping, yet the cipher itself remains elusive, hidden somewhere among the effects of dead men. Holmes's brilliant deductions have identified the Vermilion Society and established Sir Henry's connection to the conspiracy. But the photograph of Sir Henry conversing with Lei Chen in Calcutta speaks of machinations stretching back many years before the theft occurred. The pieces of this intricate puzzle begin to arrange themselves, yet the complete picture remains tantalizingly obscure. Who truly possesses the Vermilion Cipher? What became of Colonel Hartley's estate after his death in 1893? And most pressing of all, will Sir Henry discover our investigation before we can gather sufficient evidence to bring him to justice? If you are finding this chronicle as compelling as I found the living of it, I do most earnestly beseech you to express your appreciation by selecting the like button below. Do subscribe to this channel and ring the notification bell that you shall receive immediate word when Chapter 6 is released. Join us next in Chapter 6, The Trap is Set, wherein Holmes devises an audacious scheme to draw out the Black Lotus assassins, Inspector Lestrade joins our cause, and a midnight confrontation on the streets of London proves that this affair grows ever more perilous with each passing hour. The game quickens, dear friends, and danger approaches from quarters yet unseen. Until we meet again in these chronicles, I remain your faithful narrator, Dr. John H. Watson. The pursuit intensifies in Chapter 6.